Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome back to a new live event with CareerFoundry. I'm Linda, Junior Events Manager here at CareerFoundry, and I'm hosting today's event from sunny Berlin. I'm super excited to be here today because we are joined again by CareerFoundry graduate Julian Gerdes. Hi, Julian. It's great to have you back. And for those of you who don't know, Julian joined us for a live interview back in April, where he talked about his career change journey and what it was like studying at CareerFoundry with a Bildungsgutschein from the German government. We'll also share this link to the recording in the chat, so you can check it out later if you're interested. However, today's event is all about video because Julian is currently the account manager and video producer at digital branding agency TLGG here in Berlin, and he will teach us all about video, the basics of creating exciting video content in the next hour. And he's put an amazing presentation together, and will also answer any of your questions that you might have at the end. And we'll do that at the end of the session. Just a couple of things before we get started. Please let us know where you're joining us from, where you're watching us from by dropping your name in the chat. On Big Marker, this is on the right-hand side corner. And if you're on LinkedIn, then you also have the chat on the right. And we do this because we like to keep this event as interactive as possible. And so feel free to put any comments that you would like to share with us throughout the event. Before we kick off and I give the floor to Julian, let me just quickly introduce you to CareerFoundry. So CareerFoundry is the online school for your career change into tech, and we teach UX design, UI design, web development, data analytics, digital marketing, and product management. And we got you from complete beginner to job ready tech professional, and help you land your first job in the field. But we're not like any old school. Our programs are so flexible that you don't need to quit your day job to change your career, and you get regular one-on-one mentorship from not one, but two industry experts. And if you don't land a job within 180 days of graduation, we refund your tuition. That is our job guarantee. But yeah, if you'd like to find out more, you can book a free call with one of our program advisors. They're all super lovely. I know them all personally, and they love to answer any questions you might have. And you can book a call by clicking the sticky note on the right-hand side in Big Marker. One last thing before we finally get started. I just want to mention that this webinar will be recorded, and we will be sending the recording out via email afterwards. And yeah, if you have any questions for Julian, please post them in the chat throughout the event, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. Cool, this is all from me. I've talked enough. I'm so happy to have you here, Julian. Let's get started. I'm going to fade in the background and be back in the end. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro, and thank you for inviting me again. I can't see any of you right now, but I'm happy that you're all here. I'm glad to be talking to you about video production. As Linda mentioned, I am a producer, and it is something I am naturally very, very passionate about. So that I hope that everything coming up is interesting for you, insightful, whether you're starting a career in content creation, production, or anything digital marketing related. So I will share my screen, which means I will be unable to see the chat here. But like Linda said, we'll get to questions at the end of the presentation. So, technology break. All right. Linda, can you maybe just give me a shout and confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. I hope everyone else who's in the meeting can also see it. If not, please let us know in the chat.
I certainly hope so. All right, so thank you very much. This is an introduction to video production for digital marketing. As Linda said, I am Julian. I'm 32 years old. I'm originally from San Francisco, and I've been in Berlin for, I think, a decade exactly next year. I did the CareerFoundry UX design course in 2018. And after that, I went into film production. And I'm now working as a producer and account manager for a digital agency, TLGG, which is based in Kreuzberg. I love films very, very much. I love talking about them, and sometimes I also make them. So why are we here? Well, I can't answer life's big questions. I am prepared to talk to you a little bit about the ins and outs of video production, content creation, and how that all fits into the landscape of digital marketing. As I mentioned before, whatever angle you're coming from, I hope that the next slides are interesting for you. I would love to talk to you more about these topics and answer questions at the end. I would say let's dive right into it. So a little bit of agenda. This is what we'll be talking about today. I'm giving some context about where video has been, why it's persisted, what makes a good video, what kinds of platforms are out there, and what people should consider when posting or making content for those platforms. Talking about digital marketing and video, who's exactly doing what in that whole hierarchy, an introduction to production and production processes, and then giving some tips for junior producers or creators. And then lastly, some useful resources for creatives or anyone who's just interested in learning a little bit more about video and all that's included there. So where has video been and why has it persisted? Starting off with a little bit of a timeline, I always like to give some context just about where video has been, because it will help us kind of understand where we are now and what we're talking about when we talk about video production. So if you remember maybe the 1980s, not sure, maybe some of you do, it was all about music videos. If you were an artist, if you were a musician, this was how you marketed yourself. This was how you communicated and engaged with your audience. If I was a casual fan of an artist, this is how I got information about my favorite artist. I couldn't follow them on Instagram. I couldn't stalk their social media to find out what their taste is, what they're into. I had to wait for their music videos to release. In the 90s, it became all about reality TV with stations like MTV, VH1 getting bigger, more popular. Reality TV shows like The Real World, Survival, Big Brother kind of played with this fascination with the persona and following everyday people through their everyday lives. That might sound familiar to you. We're doing the same thing on Instagram today. And then in the 2000s, it became about user-generated content. So taking that same fascination with the everyday person, I would say, or just with watching people do things in their everyday lives. Platforms like YouTube, Vimeo, and Dailymotion really gave platforms to creators who are making this kind of content, which maybe wasn't flashy, was a bit more educational and informational, but was relatable because it was real and it was kind of unpolished. Fast forward to 2010s, short form video and live streaming really took off with platforms like Vine, Instagram, TikTok. So we kind of moved away from longer form content and realized that people wanted more content and they wanted it in shorter, more digestible packages. And so these platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Vine, really made a platform where those type of videos, those type of content pieces could really live and get a lot of visibility. Fast forward even more, 2020s, we're still doing the same things. Short video is really still, the king in the content world. Live streaming is still big. UGC is everywhere. We're still fascinated with people's lives and this reality TV aspect. But everything now is made for these platforms specifically, or even more specifically for devices. So you'll notice that the algorithm promotes Reels more than anything. That's because vertical videos are just more successful on phones, on devices and tablets, because they take up more screen time. When you're scrolling through Instagram, a vertical video will stay on your screen for longer than a horizontal landscape video, which means you have more chance of sticking with that content and engaging with it. And agencies, brands, creators know this. And so now we're making content specifically for the 9:16, this vertical format. Another couple of things that are also really hot and trendy right now are virtual events. Obviously, the pandemic forced us all inside and made a lot of events transition to the digital space. Even after the pandemic, we find that this is something that is still interesting as it's opening up new avenues for experiences, marketing, and just content creation. Something that I really love that's happening right now too is 360-degree video. I'm sure you've seen these like very strange looking videos where you can see like this 360-degree kind of globe type perspective. It's just another new way that we're able to show perspectives in video format and provide different visual experiences that other medias just can't. So that's just a little wrap up about where video has been over the last 50 years or so. To kind of illustrate that timeline visually, I've included two videos that I quite like. The one on the left is a music video for Freedom 90 by George Michael. It was released in 1990, and it is really your archetypal 90s music video. It has this really moody neon chromatic lighting. You have a protagonist singing to their distant lover or unrequited love. And throughout the video, you're watching these two people go through different scenarios, living out different narratives, and at the end, hoping that they meet each other. I'll play just a few seconds just to get a vibe for it. Also give myself a little coffee break. So yeah, if you haven't seen the video, would recommend, because it's just a really great music video, and it really is representative of how artists were branding themselves in the 90s with music videos. So fast forwarding to 2022, last year Beyonce released a new album called Renaissance, and leading up to the release of the album, she followed no traditional marketing tactics. She didn't have any music videos. She didn't post online. She didn't really have a proper campaign strategy, or at least I'm saying from my perspective. But what she did was start a TikTok account and tell her audience, hey, everyone, I'm on TikTok. And then when her new song, her single, I think it was called The Wiggle, came out, she would repost user-generated content from her fans, from her audiences, and would repost that on her TikTok. And obviously this went viral. It became a conversation on TikTok. And that was essentially the marketing for her album. So giving a little glimpse of that too. Yeah, the style of video by now. And it just goes to show you just how far video has come, not so much technologically, but culturally. It's still really ingrained in the arts. It's still really closely tied to the music industry. And artists are just using it in different ways to connect to their audiences, to market themselves. And it's making for really fun content and some interesting opportunities for filmmakers.
Oh, when I say Beyonce,
sorry about that. And yeah, a quote that I like from Prince, from Pigeons and Planes, which is a blog that I like to follow. It's really cool. He once said that the internet is like MTV. At one time, MTV was hip, and then suddenly it became outdated. I think we can all relate to that at the moment. I know a few years ago, we felt like Instagram was going to take over the entire world, and we could never imagine that another platform would supersede it. Then came TikTok, and we see how that is kind of played out now. So just seeing where all of this is going to take us, I'm not sure. But I think there are a lot of reasons why video has persisted as a dominant media form. There's a convenience factor. It's absolutely everywhere. It's incredibly ubiquitous. We have platforms by the dozens, in our pockets that will give us new content every day, every hour, every minute. And so it's really convenient. If you're looking for entertainment, the entertainment value is high because people are just making really good stuff. And I think the bar has been lowered, and the idea of making video content and making really interesting and engaging video content has just become more accessible, i.e. TikTok. Netflix is cranking out hundreds of new series and films per year. So we've just realized that there is more of a hunger for engaging video content. And I think people around the world are doing a great job of delivering those needs. Obviously, marketing potential of video is extremely high. Every brand has an Instagram. Every brand is tapping into the virality phenomenon, trying to go viral, because they recognize that humans are really captivated by video in ways that they are not by other forms of media. I would like to say, though, that all of this aside, it boils down to the fact that humans are visual creatures, and video provides a compelling and immersive experience that photo just can't, that other mediums simply cannot. So that's what video has been, and that is a little bit about why it has persisted. We can go on this topic. Maybe you have some questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I can get to them afterwards. Now I would like to go into what makes a good video. I think this is very, very subjective, but this is an idea that I have. And the man on the right also had a similar idea. His name is James Broughton. He is a poet and filmmaker from San Francisco. He was very active in the 50s and 60s, and he once wrote a book called Seeing the Light, which is about filmmaking and specifically Zen in filmmaking. That sounds interesting. I would highly recommend it. It's a short read. And in this book, he gives a few ideas about what he believes makes a good image. Image in this sense applying to still image or moving image. So the elements that he believes make up a good video are element of surprise. So a good image should be unexpected. It should catch us off guard. It should have an element of delight. The image should evoke feelings of pleasure, help us release positive happiness hormones. Revelation, the image or the video should reveal something new or something that was before unknown. Insight, the image should provide a deeper understanding of the subject being observed or the world at large. And then finally, aesthetic satisfaction. So the image should be visually appealing and it should be well composed. He doesn't say that all of these things have to be present in the image for it to be quote unquote good. It can be two of these things. It can be one of them that's executed really well. But I would challenge you to look at some of your favorite films, some of your favorite pictures and paintings that you have hanging around, and think how many of those boxes does that image actually tick. To continue on the James Broughton tip, because I'm obviously a big fan, I've included a video that he made in 1973 called Hayakukus. It was written and shot entirely by James Broughton. And essentially the film is just a one shot. So just a single scene, a static image of a pond with James reciting a poem on top of it. So to kind of think about this idea of what makes a good image, we'll just take a look at this example. Again, I will just give a little bit of a preview.
Any way you look at it, said the camera, this is the way it is. Everything is a little bit different, said the sky, and everything is more the same.
So I hope that gives you an idea. That is essentially the whole film for 3 minutes and 8 seconds. He's reciting this poem and we're just watching this kind of mysterious and moody scene play out before us. So analyzing that according to his theory of what makes a good image, I believe that this video possesses all of those things. I think it ticks all the boxes. It's surprising in that it provides an unusual perspective. We're not really sure what we're looking at or from which angle. Delight in the sense that it's very serene. For me, it makes me feel very calm. I think the sound design also contributes to that. There's revelation in the fact that there's new information coming into the image. As you watch, there are more things that are flying across the camera. There are insects and bugs that are coming through the frame. So you're slowly getting a better understanding of what it is you're looking at and what type of environment you're in. Insight in that it provides, a simple yet complex image of nature and your interworkings. I think that it's insightful in that it shows you, or if you read into it the way that I did, gives you an idea of the interconnectedness of nature. And aesthetically, I find it very satisfying because it's a pleasing composition. It's very even, the tones are very soft, and it follows the rule of thirds, which brings me to my next point. What is the rule of thirds? I'm sure you've heard this at some point, but the rule of thirds is essentially a rule in photography where the composition of an image is broken up into thirds, so in horizontal and vertical quadrants. The rule states that if you place the key elements of your image in all of those quadrants, then you will end up with a well-composed image that is naturally pleasing to the eye. You will create an image that the eye biologically will be drawn to and feel more inclined to focus on. So I believe that this film and this image applies that rule of thirds because there's lots of different information in all of these quadrants, and it's only when you see the full image together that you understand, okay, I'm looking at an image from the pond. I'm looking at this nature scene. So let me know in the comments what you thought of the film. I don't know anyone else who's seen it, so if you have seen it, let me know. Let me know what you think. So whatever you are making, whether it's something artistic and more mystical, like the film we just watched, or something more for the masses, for your Instagram or TikTok audiences, the content should be relatable. You should try and relate to your audiences and give them a chance to see themselves, to see their experience reflected in the content that they're seeing. The more that content is seen as relatable, the more it's seen as something genuine, trustworthy. They don't feel like they're being sold something. They don't feel like a brand is just trying to catch on to a trend to sell them an experience or sell them a product. They feel like there's a person just like them on the other side of that creative process. And those emotional responses ultimately will allow people to remember your content. They'll remember that thing you made. They will remember your Instagram handle. So the next time you come out with something, they're more likely to engage with it again. So an example of something that is extremely relatable, for me at least, is a TikTok made by a creator. And the topic is me listening to my completely unorganized 400-hour, 28-minute long playlist. I think we can all relate to the experience of, putting on a Spotify playlist or any other playlist that is just kind of all over. It's got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I think this just does a really good job illustrating the range of emotions that we go through. Sorry, I'll stop it there. Yeah. So something very, very simple, very easy to execute, but highly, highly relatable. Okay, moving on, talking about platforms and what to consider when thinking about platforms.
Hey, Julian.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give you a couple of comments that we received on LinkedIn, since you can't see them.
Please.
And I just thought this was really relatable, because Victoria said, shout out to Victoria, she said, "Man, I grew up with freedom, best video ever." With you. And also Belinda said, "Julian is bringing such good vibes to the event." So I 100% agree with that. And also that last TikTok, just really, really relatable. But sorry to interrupt. I'll let you get back to it.
No, that's okay. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the comments. I'm quite nervous, so I'm happy that it's not coming through as much as I thought it would.
Loving the examples.
Appreciate it. So yes, talking about platforms, there are hundreds and hundreds. There are probably a dozen new social media platforms that have popped up since me starting this presentation. But for the sake of video production and the context of video creation, I'll be talking about YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram, and TikTok. YouTube, as we all probably know, is really more ideal for longer form content, tutorials, documentaries, vlogs, web series, TED Talks, more educational content. Vimeo is similar in that it's more favorable for longer form content, but it has a bit of a different audience. It's really a platform for filmmakers, for videographers and visual artists who favor high quality video content and aesthetic, and who want to engage with more artistic and more high quality content, and who are really leaning on the integrity of the platform. So if you're a filmmaker and you want to get a short film seen at a festival, at Cannes, then you're probably more likely to share it on Vimeo, because you know that there's a demographic there who is also having certain expectations about the platform and what is being shared there. Instagram, we all know, is probably the best platform for visual storytelling, talking about photo and video. Just because it has so many different functions, so many different widgets and filters that create for a really, really wide range of expressions. It's also really ideal for showcasing products and services and engaging with audiences. Me personally, when I want to go to a restaurant or like a venue, I don't go to Foursquare or Google reviews. I mostly go to see if that place has an Instagram. And then I try to check if people have tagged that place in their own stories and their own content, because that for me gives a really authentic glimpse into what that place is doing, what they're offering, rather than something curated that they put on their own channels. And then TikTok, also a platform really suited for short form content. TikTok is really more of an entertainment platform than a social media platform. However, it's really more about the content that lives there. It's really more about showing your most wild self and your most wild interests and ideas rather than commenting and discussing. And something that also sets it apart from Instagram is its emphasis on music and sound. There are TikToks that go viral just because they include like a soundbite or a song snippet that's really popular at the moment. And that's also something that makes it incredibly useful for artists, as we saw with the Beyonce example. If you're a musician or a music artist, and you want to market yourself on TikTok or draw attention to other platforms, one really successful technique is to post on TikTok, to share your sounds on TikTok, and try to achieve some type of virality and conversions to other platforms. So that is kind of a range of platforms that I use as a filmmaker and that I use in my agency when making content for brands. And along with your platforms, obviously need to consider the people on the other side of those platforms, right? So thinking about target audience is incredibly important. If you want to make something for Instagram, who are the people on the other side of your Instagram handle? What are their demographics? What are their interests? What do they like? What do they not like? How are they behaving? You might not be able to get all of that information, but as much as you can research and think about those things, the more it will help you define a purpose for your video content. So what exactly do you want to do with that thing you are making? Do you just want to entertain? Do you want to educate? Do you want to inspire people? Do you want to promote something? Do you want to do all of those things? The more that you're able to define a purpose and think about your target audience will allow you to make platform-specific content. So not just making something and uploading it to the ether and hoping that it gets engaged with, which does work for a lot of times, but making content that is really tailored for those platforms, for those users, and that is paying attention to the formats and visual codes that are really successful on those platforms. So speaking for me personally, when I make a film for a client or for an artist, we normally have a hero film, so something made for the longer form platforms like YouTube or Vimeo, but then we make cut downs for other platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And they follow completely different rules because those platforms have different audiences, they have different algorithms, and so taking into consideration all of those things will just allow you to get the most out of those platforms and allow them to work for you when you're using them to share your video content. So digital marketing and video. We've talked a little bit now about video culture, where it's been, platforms and audiences, but who is actually making all of this content? One answer is agencies. I work for an agency, and an agency is essentially a business that acts as an intermediary. They represent and work on behalf of different clients, and also interact and engage with audiences on behalf of those clients. So the brands don't have to post and comment and respond to things themselves. They don't often have to make content themselves. They have agencies do those things for them. Again, there are dozens and dozens of different kinds of agencies. You have agencies that only do SEO. You have agencies that only specialize in translations. But for this conversation, I will be talking about three, and those are content marketing agencies, social media agencies, and creative agencies. Content marketing agency, as it might sound, is a business that really helps with the distribution phase and sharing content once it has already been created, coming up with sharing strategies once that content has been created. And sometimes they are also producing the content themselves. Then there are social media agencies, which are really concentrating on the management and optimization of platforms. Excuse me. So coming up with strategies for engagement with audiences. They are really experts in social media and are advising clients on how to best use the platforms that are at their disposal. And then you have creative agencies or creative lead agencies. And these are normally, the lead agency that determine things like brand identity, logo design, core brand messaging, and are responsible for the larger brand campaigns. It's not unusual for a client to have multiple agencies. Some clients have an SEO agency, a translation agency. They have a creative lead agency that does their campaigns, and then that content gets handed over to a social media agency, which plans everything for social media and does community management, makes reports. And there's a lot of overlap between these agencies as well, because everybody wants to be the one-stop shop for their clients. Everybody wants to make content, publish it, and help optimize. And so it's not unusual for there to be a lot of overlap. So for example, I work for an agency that is traditionally known as being a social media agency, that started off as a social media agency, but now we offer consulting, brand consultation, we do content production, we produce TV commercials, we offer PR services. So really trying to be a one-stop shop for everything. So what does a normal agency setup look like? Depending on where you are, what type of agency, what type of culture there is there. There are hundreds of different setups, different hierarchies that you could experience. I don't like using the word hierarchy in the sense that people are above or more important than anyone else, but really just talking about a chain of command and how information gets passed through different funnels, through different teams, and how creative projects are then executed with all of these different people. So looking at a social media agency setup, you have a client or multiple clients who are sitting pretty, just chilling, and then you have an agency that maybe has different teams, and maybe that team has an account director who is the main, what is the English word? Point of contact for their client. They're the ones handling contracts and payment models, things like that. And then they have an account team comprised of a couple of account managers. These managers are also responsible for client contact, maintaining client relationships, handling budgets, but they're the ones who are really responsible for the hands-on coordination of project teams. And those teams are comprised of a lot of different positions. So aside from the account teams, you usually have a creative director or creative directors who are the leads of the creative departments. And while they work collaboratively, they are really responsible for resourcing, resource planning, growth and development of the people who are in their teams, and putting together project teams when a briefing comes through. So with these creative directors, they normally have a conceptor, someone who is responsible for coming up with ideas for a project. You have art directors, you have designers, content directors, copywriters, community managers. There are lots of different positions that could be existing in the agency setup. These are the ones that I work with mostly, and so I wanted to talk about these ones. And now looking at a marketing campaign, taking a step back. So when you have a client, when you are an agency, you are helping the clients to execute campaigns. And a campaign, not talking about Call of Duty, campaign is a coordinated set of marketing activities. And these activities normally have a specific goal. They're to be carried out within a specific time frame, so leading up to a launch or an event of a product or a service. And they have a lot of different purposes, but mainly a campaign is there to create awareness and visibility, let people know that something is happening, generating interest and engagement, so getting the audience excited and curious about what it is to come, and then ultimately driving conversions and sales. So conversion is, for example, if you are a brand and you have a piece of content posted on your Instagram, and I think that content is cool, and then I click the link in your story to go to your landing page or to go buy that product that you've been marketing online, that would be a conversion. So agencies help brands and clients set up campaigns so that they can sell products, so they can sell services, and reach their target audiences. Looking again at this hierarchy, this structure, within the context of a campaign, it all starts with a briefing, which is normally a very unorganized document or a set of documents that comes from a client, then gets consolidated and interpreted by an account team or an account director who says, okay, this is the scope of work. This is the project that the client wants us to execute. We need X, Y, and Z in order to make this happen. Once those terms are met, timing and budget is agreed upon, then the account manager would normally take that briefing and improve it and take it to a creative director. They would then discuss the scope of work. What is the project? What do we need to make in the end? And what roles are necessary? They would then work with the creative director to set up a project team. Maybe it consists of just an art director and a copywriter, maybe 2 art directors, maybe a designer, maybe a motion designer or a 3D illustrator, depending on the needs of the project. You would then go through different iterations of ideas, coming up with potential ideas for execution for that campaign, for that briefing. And then you would have feedback rounds with the client. So you would say, dear client, this is our initial idea. Please tell us what you think. And the client would normally say, hey, this is terrible. Please make it better. Just kidding. They would normally say something like, here is our thoughts. Please implement our feedback and give us another draft. And then you would go through these feedback rounds until you have a final concept, basically a final agreed upon idea of how to execute that thing that the client wants you to do. This final concept then is something that goes into production, which we'll go into later. And this concept ends up being the content that will live on your devices. So skipping production really quickly and talking about the distribution phase. So once you've gone through the briefing process, once you have a final concept approved by the client, once you have given that concept over and produced the content you want, if you are the social media agency that we were looking at before, you would take that content and you would release it to the ether, posting it on all of your various channels, maybe on television, maybe in a digital out-of-home experience like a screen at Alexanderplatz, and you would implement a content strategy. So how is that content going to be posted? How is it going to roll out? And that is all based on what type of engagement essentially you want out of that content. If you're a social media agency, then you're staying on top of what has been posted and you're answering questions, noting down complaints, engaging with the audience to give them an experience, give them the experience that they're really being engaged with and that they're being listened to, and that the brand that they like or the artist that they like is engaging with them and hopefully getting some conversions out of it. So that was a lot. Please, if you have any questions about agency structures, briefing processes, put them in the channel and we can discuss afterwards. I'll now be going back to production. So who is actually making that content, if not the agency themselves? Linda, did you have a question? I thought I heard a microphone turn on.
No, so far I'm listening intently. Thank you.
No problem. So introduction to video production. There are agencies that are self-titled video production or production agencies, and they specialize in the execution of ideas. So either concepting ideas and then executing them in-house, or being hired by a social media agency who has the final concept and who has a budget for production. And a production is just a reference to a process of creating photo, video content from development stage to final execution. So there are 4 phases. The first one is the pre-production phase, which is the planning and preparation phase. This is where the concept is made, if it hasn't already been made, where you're defining a content's purpose, like we discussed before, creating storyboards, scouting locations, putting together teams, organizing logistics, scheduling, all of the administrative, boring stuff, which maybe is not boring to you. And then taking all of that information and going into production. And this is where the planned content is actually filmed, shot, or recorded. Post-production comes afterwards. This is where you take everything that was captured and refine it and edit it to make the final content piece that will eventually live online and in the digital world. And then you have the distribution exhibition phase, which is where final content, photo or video, is distributed, shared on various platforms, and is reaching the masses. And we all know where it goes from there. So again, looking at structures, depending on the project, depending on the scope of work, depending on the budget, on the artistic needs of the project, there could be dozens of different setups, but typically, if you have, a small mid-level budget for a project, this is a typical setup. You would have a producer or producers who are responsible for all of the organizational, administrative things that we talked about in the pre-production phase. They work collaboratively with a director, who is the person who is giving instructions on set, advising the talents, or advising what is supposed to be happening in front of the camera. You have a director of photography or a DOP or videographer, who is responsible for actually recording what is happening in front of them and making sure that it is stored. You have light technicians, or sparks, gaffers as they're called. And then depending on the project, you might have a sound technician, you might have a set designer, a wardrobe stylist, a hair and makeup artist. You might have a grip team. A grip team is essentially a team, people that are hired to build and transport all of the heavy equipment that is necessary for light and camera equipment. It's really essential on big sets because it just saves a lot of time building up equipment. And then you normally have production assistants who are supporting different departments in anything that they need. They're also called runners, which is maybe something that you might have heard. There's also another kind of production setup, and that is the bedroom content creator setup. Nowadays, you have really everything you need to produce high quality content right in your hip pocket. And with some basic knowledge about lights, composition, and editing, you can make really high quality, compelling content that is even suitable for brand channels right in your living room. And so sometimes as an agency, depending on the needs of the project, depending on the budgets, you can either go the classical production route and work with larger teams, or you can hire someone who is more agile, more self-sufficient, and who is responsible for all of the steps of production, lighting, camera, post-production, on their own. And this is also something that can be wildly successful. So I include another example from TikTok from a very, very talented creator who made a Sprite commercial in her college dorm room.
I filmed a commercial in my college dorm. So
Okay,
since
so
my
to
dorm
that-
was quite small, I didn't have space to set up my backdrop stand. So I turned my desk into a makeshift set with 2 bed sheets.
So you see this
For this
person is
shot,
her
I stuck a
own
lemon slice on a
camera
paintbrush,
person,
spun it around, and masked it
her
in
own
with
art
Sprite and
director,
Toast to make it fly out from
her
behind the
own
can.
light
Here, I
technician,
cut the can in half and poured
then
water
her
through
own
it to make it
post-producer
seem like
at
the
the
camera
end.
was inside the can. Without further ado, here is the final commercial.
Get it, boys.
You get the idea. I love that she uses the fidget spinner to rotate the can at the end. Just really wildly creative, and just shows you what you can do with really, really simple means and materials if you take the time.
I filmed a
Oops, sorry. So whether you are wanting to get into production, like we talked about before in the classical production setup, or content creation where you want to be really responsible for everything and be kind of a one man or one woman show, these are some tips that I like to give to friends, colleagues when they're starting out, and I hope they're helpful for you too. First one is simply starting with the basics. You don't have to be a master at anything right away. Just watch tutorials on camera angles, composition, lighting, audio, whatever it is that your niche is. Just having a basic understanding of film theories and certain concepts, certain technical aspects will give you enough of a framework to have conversations with filmmakers, to ask different types of questions, and ultimately help you figure out whatever niche it is that is right for you. So even though it's daunting, I know it's really kind of scary to look at all of that, film jargon and think, oh, wow, I really don't understand something. Just start with the basics and go from there. I think you'll really be surprised with how quickly things catch on. And then putting yourself out there, getting real world experience. I'm a self-taught filmmaker. And when I was starting out, I would do just that. I would ask friends who were making music, who were directing, if I could just help out on set, carrying equipment, setting up lights, doing anything that they needed. I think the best way to learn about filmmaking is on a film set. And even though these jobs might not be high paying or paying at all, it's really great for networking. It's a really great way to learn about the filmmaking process and how all of the different departments need to work together on a film set. Creating structures and processes and workflows that can be repeated and that work for you. So whether you're producing content, more in an organizational capacity, or creating the content for yourself and are responsible for the creative output, use templates, set up processes that you will use again, so that you can become masters of those processes. They'll help you be more efficient in your own work, and they'll also help people who collaborate with you kind of know how you work. So for example, if I hire my friend Sebastian, who I work with often, and I give him a document, he already knows how my mind works. He understands what my expectations are. He knows my working style, and he's just better able to work with me because he's seen those workflows repeated multiple times. I would also recommend starting a PPM booklet from the start of your project and updating it regularly. PPM is short for pre-production meeting. This is a meeting that happens once or a couple times before a production takes place, where you have all of the departments in one room or one call, and you go through every step and every aspect of your production from front to back. And this PPM booklet is essentially your Bible for the production. You should be able to hand this document to anybody on the planet, and they should be able to understand, whether they're a filmmaker or not, what it is you want to achieve and what is necessary to achieve that goal. I've also made a template for a PPM booklet. If you've never seen this document before, we'll share it with you after the event. So if you'd like to use it for your own productions, your own projects, feel free to.
Yes, I just want to quickly jump in while we're talking about the PPM booklet. We actually have it pinned in Big Marker. So for everyone who's joining us in Big Marker, you can download it, but we'll also send it around via email along with the recording. Also just a quick reminder for everyone who's joining us in Big Marker or on LinkedIn, this is your time to ask any questions in the chat. We have a very shy crowd today, but I just wanted to let everybody know that Julian's almost at the end of his presentation. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Sorry, I'll give you back the floor.
No worries. Thank you. I needed a little breather. Feel free to take this document and make it your own, customize it. Feel free to adapt it based on your own needs and your own projects. Fourth tip is don't just hire anybody. So if you are in a role where you are hiring freelancers, like I am often, or if you're creative yourself and you need to hire an assistant or a camera person, don't just look at the follower counts. Don't just look at who has been making the hot content on Instagram, but take time to get to know those people and think about what type of personalities you are inviting to be part of your production teams. You will have to work with these people for weeks and sometimes months on a daily basis. And you really just want to make sure that you're working with someone who is going to respect you, who is going to respect your team, respect your clients, speak to people the way that they want to be spoken to. All of these things go a long way for making good vibes on the set, which is really something that is, I think, underrated. I always like to say the best feedback that I ever got from a client after a production was, wow, that was a lot of fun. You guys are a great team. Even though we made really cool content in the end, that really felt the most meaningful to me, to know that we made a real world experience that was productive and that was efficient and lucrative for the client, but that was also just really a lot of fun. Following up on that last one, creating personal relationships with your team. So don't just treat people like tools, don't just give them tasks and thank them when they do a task, but take time to get to know people, understand their communication styles, how they tick, how they think, how they like to be treated. I always say that production is a people business because it's really about getting people from different backgrounds, different minds to work collaboratively towards a set goal. And so if you're someone who is especially in an organizational role, like I am often, take the time and speak to people on the phone rather than just sending emails back and forth. I think it'll go a long way to, create a sense of familiarity that will help you also be an effective leader on set. If you're someone like me who is not really comfortable telling people what to do and telling people, hey, we're behind, I need this done in 2 minutes, it'll come to you easier if you've developed a relationship with the person and know that you have a mutual respect and sense of understanding with each other. When creating a shooting schedule for talent. So you will very, very rarely, if ever, schedule things chronologically on a production day. Most often you'll consider your lighting needs. So where is the sun? When do we need the sun? What type of light do we need? What are the location restrictions? These things will often influence how you schedule your days. But one thing that should really, really inform how you schedule a production is what the people are doing. So what are the people in front of the camera actually doing? If you have an actor or an actress who has a really, really stressful scene, say a crying scene, schedule things like that for earlier in the day. Maybe not first thing in the morning, but maybe like early afternoon, so they can do those things that require a lot of energy when they're not already exhausted from the day. Also pay attention to who has more screen time, who is in front of the camera most, who is doing things that are a little bit more stressful, planning in breaks for those people, and creating a schedule that is ultimately, just right for everybody so that everyone can avoid being burnt out for the end of the day. Finally, know your concept in and out. Whether you are a creative or a producer or a creative producer, if you're responsible for the organization and execution of a production, you really need to know your concept in and out. I always use the example of a light socket. So let's say you have a creative team, or I have a creative team and I'm a producer, and my creative team has come up with a really, really cool idea with lots of lights, fixtures, and lots of interesting lightings. And they say, hey, Julian, let's execute this idea. But I know that the location we have is not right for this idea because we don't have the right number of sockets for electricity. If you're organizing a shoot, you need to understand all of the potential restrictions and limitations that you could face so that you can think of solutions for them. And you need to think of those things ahead of time because you don't want to waste time on a shooting day thinking, okay, actually we need X, Y, Z. I didn't think of this. You really need to know those things in advance. So no stress, but if you want to avoid the stress on shooting day, take the time to really know the ins and outs, the X's and O's of your concept. Finally, coming to some resources for first-time creators or anyone who's just interested in knowing more about film. As I mentioned, I'm a self-taught filmmaker, and these are some resources that I used as I was coming up and that I still use really often just to go to for inspiration or just learn things that I'm interested in. The ones in green are free tools, and the one in red at the bottom is not free. So there's No Film School, which is an online blog providing film, tech, and TV news for filmmakers and also made by filmmakers or just people who are passionate about visual media. They also have a really great newsletter. Excuse me. The second one is In-Depth Cine. It's a YouTube channel, and he's a creator who makes really in-depth videos that go into filmmaking processes, things that are a bit more technical, but in a really accessible and digestible way. And so even though I'm not a camera person, I work a lot with camera people. So I listen to things like this to try and understand technical processes just so that I can be a more effective leader and just more effective listener on set as well. If my camera team is talking about something that I'm just able to understand, then that's useful for me because then I'm able to help them if they run into an issue on set. Next one is video. Sorry, I always mess this one up. Vimeo Video School. It's a parallel to the Vimeo platform where they offer tutorials and everything from basic camera techniques to software editing. They have a lot of paid courses, but also a lot of free tutorials. Next one is Reddit. If anyone is still using Reddit out there, there are a lot of really, really great subreddits on all kinds of topics from videography to editing. You can post your own projects and ask for feedback. You can engage with other creators. I just checked these threads yesterday, and they're really, really engaging. So if you want more of a fast-paced, engaging community to talk about films and things, Reddit is a great place for that. And then the last one is Skillshare. I'm sure most of you know what that is. Online learning platform that offers a range of courses and everything from baking to Adobe Premiere Pro. It's not free, but if you're looking into getting really, really into the nitty-gritty of some technical aspects of filmmaking, it's another good place to look. Yeah, I hope those are helpful for you. And then I would like to end, as I always do, with a quote from one of my favorite directors, Quentin Tarantino. He says that whenever people ask him if he went to film school, he says, no, I went to films. And so if you're like me, and if you're someone who struggles with or ever struggled with imposter syndrome, being someone who didn't go to film school and learned everything by doing on their own, I would say don't sweat it. Don't compare yourself. Just follow your passions. If you have a project in mind, try to think of ideas to get that project into fruition, manifest it into the real world, and just believe in your own creative abilities. Good things will come from there. That's all my time. I hope it was helpful. Thank you for listening. I would love to hear if you have any questions.
Hi, Julian. I'm back. Thank you so much for this great presentation. I, for one, really enjoyed it, especially all the examples that you included. I was just vibing to Beyonce here in my office. Luckily, nobody walked past. Cool. Yeah, so again, for anyone who may have joined us a little bit late, we'll be answering your questions now. Yeah, we do have a few audience questions, but also I had a few questions myself. And I think something that'd be really interesting for the audience before we dive into questions about the presentation would be just if you could quickly talk a little bit more about your background, your previous experiences, also like how studying UX at CareerFoundry like impacted you and also helps you with your current role. If that's something you can just briefly give us a little bit more info about.
Definitely can. So as I mentioned, I am a self-taught filmmaker. I did not go to film school. I studied psychology in university, and I realized in my last semester that this isn't quite for me. I wanted to work with people, but still do something a little bit more creative, something that also was tied a little bit more to tech. And so I moved to Berlin in 2013. I started working for a film company as a community manager. And then after that company went under, I wanted to keep going in that direction and get closer to tech. Also stay close to creative things. But I wanted to involve myself with tech in more of a human capacity. I was interested in the human side of technology. I'm not really interested in programming or creating technologies, but I was interested in how people use those technologies. I'm born in 1991, so I remember what life was like before the internet and before social media. And so I really wanted to use that perspective and just learn more about the tools that are coming up that we're becoming so dependent on. And I learned about UX design. I had some people close to me who were studying UX. I saw some advertisements for the UX course from CareerFoundry on Instagram. And I thought that that would be a really cool way to get closer to technology while still exploring my own interests, while looking into the human side of tech and really considering experiences and looking at that word in a broader sense. So in my work right now, I still consider that every day. I think of the experience that I'm trying to create, whether I'm working on a short project for a client or organizing a larger production. I try to think of the humans on the other end of the screens, the real people on the other side of those platforms, and try to consider their needs, their interests, their preferences when I'm doing anything. And so that's kind of the perspective that UX has given me, and that's how I still apply it in my day-to-day. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for that. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and actually ask you a question that we received on LinkedIn from, sorry if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, I think this is Sian. And they're asking, as an account manager, what is your role? I think they missed that in the beginning. So they would like to know what you actually do as an account manager.
Sure. Oh, that's a whole nother presentation. But essentially, as an account manager, it is what it sounds like. So you have an account. Let's say that your client is a beer brand. As an account manager, you are the main contact for that client. Normally, that client has someone from the marketing team or the social media team who is interacting with the agency through the account manager. So you're never really communicating with all of the different departments from an agency. The account manager is communicating with clients on behalf of the agency. So what I do as an account manager is setting up budgets for projects. When we receive briefings from clients, I'm talking to the clients about those briefings, understanding what the limitations are, what the needs, what the required output is, setting up timelines and budgets that can then get approved, that I can then take into production. It's also my job to put together the project teams. So when I have a budget approved, when I have a project that needs to move forward, it's my job then to look at, okay, we need to do a video shoot. For that, I need this position and this position to make a concept. I need these people to actually execute the idea. Those are all things that fall under the role of an account manager. So managing client relationships, that could be as easy as just answering a question. If the client says, hey, we're wondering how to do this thing best on LinkedIn, what is your advice? That would normally come through an account manager, and I would find an answer to that question. And then being the main point of contact and coordination between the client and your own departments when executing projects. And within that, there are hundreds of different tasks that could fall upon you, but that is essentially the gist of what an account manager is doing. Does that answer your question?
For me personally, yes. I hope Sian, this answers your question. I guess one follow-up question that I would have is it common that someone who's an account manager is also a producer, or would you say that it could also be two different people doing this job, or is it usually like a joint role?
I'd be interested in that myself. Most people I know who are in account management, working in agencies, are not producers. A lot of agencies have in-house producers, but a lot don't. So a lot of account managers just rely on hiring production agencies or hiring external producers when it's time to execute projects. But there is really a lot of overlap between a producer and account manager role. And I actually gave a presentation about this my own agency a couple of months ago, because I wanted to enable the account managers that were part of my team to have more of a hands-on role in production, because there's so much overlap. Essentially, if we're acting on the assumption that filmmaking is a people business and it's about managing people and coordinating and organizing people and people's times, that's also what an account manager is doing. So there's a lot of overlap, but no, generally account managers are account managers. For my specific case, I was hired because I also had a production experience, and we had some clients who had a lot of interest in producing film content. So it was a good situation for that. But generally, no, there's a split between the two roles.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for answering that. That was really interesting. Did not know about that. Amazing. We have another question from LinkedIn from Eugenio. And he's asking, how do you deal with music and sound in your agency or agencies in general? I hope that's a very broad question, I hope.
Music and sound agencies. So I'm assuming you're talking about like finding music and sound for video content once we've produced it. If that is what you mean, then there are a few different ways. So one way you can do it is produce original sound design or original music. So if you have a budget for a project, once you have a final film, let's say the film is 2 minutes long, then you would reach out to a sound designer or a composer who would make something custom made for that film. So you would give them a copy of the edited film, give them a little bit of information about the tonality, and what type of feelings, what type of message that content is supposed to convey, and then they would make something specific and tailor-made for that content. That's one route, and that's often more expensive. Another thing you can do, which is what we do more often, is using sound libraries, sound archives, like Audio Jungle. I think Songkick is another one. And these are public libraries with sounds and music, everything from, bird sounds to door closing to phone jingling, to actual jingles and songs themselves, that you can purchase. And they have different licensing packages. So you can purchase a package that will allow you to use those sounds for a video that will be on Instagram, a video that will be visible to the entire world. So those are two ways that we go about it: either producing original music and compositions, or doing original sound design, or if we don't have a lot of money, just purchasing those sounds from these sound archives and purchasing the rights to them. I hope that answers your question. If not, feel free to post a follow-up.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, Eugenio, I hope this answered your question. Really interesting question, actually. And I think especially what you mentioned about copyright, I guess that's something really, really important you need to consider whenever you put anything out there, right?
It really, really is. And there are actually people whose sole job it is to manage like buyouts and copyright issues or topics for agencies, so people who are really watching out, okay, what are the usage rights for this video that we made in 2010? When do we have to take that content down or renew the contract? Doing the same things for sounds and sound design. It's really complicated, and it's something you really have to be careful with, because brands could get sued for a lot of money if they're not careful and if they're using people's intellectual property without consent or without the proper licensing.
Yeah, that's risky. That doesn't sound like a super fun job to me, to be honest.
No, I don't think so.
Awesome, cool, thanks. The next question is from Sian again. She would like to know, I'm not sure if you can answer this because I assume you're not a video editor yourself, but the question is, what software do you mainly use for video editing? And does it depend on the content type? I assume yes.
It's a very good question. And I guess it would depend on the content type. I mean, if you want to edit something that is purely comprised of video content, I would really recommend like the Adobe Cloud. The Adobe Creative Cloud is just a really great tool for creatives. I personally do some film editing, and I use Adobe Premiere Rush. And Premiere Rush is just a simplified version of Premiere Pro. So for someone like me who's just splicing concert footage together, it's not as complicated, and it does not include all of the features that you have in Premiere Pro. What exactly all of those features are and what the limitations and capabilities are, I still have yet to explore. But if you're really just interested in editing video content, I would start with the Adobe Cloud and start with Premiere Rush or Premiere Pro, and go from there, because they're really, really comprehensive and really easy to use.
Okay, awesome, thanks. I hope that answered the question. Are these free ones, or would they need to be purchased?
They're subscription based, so you would need a subscription for the Adobe Cloud, I think, which is like, I'm not sure, like $7.99 a month. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I checked my subscriptions. But there are also a lot of free and really cheap video editing tools available in the App Store. So if you want to do something that is just a little bit more lo-fi, and is a little bit more DIY, you can find a lot of free editing tools out there. Just have to look.
Yeah, which actually brings me to the next question, which is about creating content on different platforms. So the question is from Belinda, and she's asking, what do you recommend for someone who wants to create video content on social media, for example, on Instagram? And do you have any tools that you would advise? Again, tools question.
So that's a really great question. Thank you for that one. My biggest tip for creating content or deciding what type of content you want to or should create for Instagram would be to engage with content on Instagram. So whatever I do when I'm starting to make a concept for a film is I try to find inspirations. I try to find moods. I try to find films, music videos, short content pieces out there, photos that kind of represent the aesthetic or the feeling that I want to achieve in my own films. And I just gather all of that information just to create a mood board. So I would definitely recommend that. Just start creating a mood board, gathering inspiration from just things that you like from all over the web or from the real world even, and just starting to think about what it is you want to make. And then, as I mentioned in one of the slides in the presentation, just thinking about what your goal is for that content. So what do you want people to feel? What type of experience do you want to give them? Do you want them to learn something? Are you an artist? Do you want to show the beauty of your creativity? Do you have something insightful that you think other people should know? Trying to narrow those things down and just asking yourself questions about your content from a viewer's perspective is really, really helpful. And then just getting started, writing your ideas down, trying to make a storyboard. I think that would be really helpful. It's a great question, and if you want to talk more about it, post a follow-up question, find me on LinkedIn, write me there, and we can talk more about how to help you get started.
Awesome, thanks. I guess as for tools for Instagram, did you have any particular in mind? I think I've heard of CapCut or something like this, but I personally haven't used it before.
Or for editing, I've heard of CapCut. For editing, I personally use Adobe for editing, but there are lots of tools that you can use for editing content, photo or video, that are built into the Instagram app or that are available in the web store. I think it really depends on your specific needs and your specific content that you want to create. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that one.
Okay, no worries. Would you say then, for people who are just starting out, it's fine to use the built-in features in apps like Instagram or TikTok, or would you say, no, you definitely need to get
No.
a more high quality?
No, I would definitely say just start with the easy tools and just get a feeling for making content and putting it online, because it's very scary, at least for me personally. So just get into the habit of creating an idea, editing it yourself, and sharing it with the community. I think from there you'll see in the first hour of it being online, okay, maybe I can do that differently. Next time, maybe I'll do this and this and that. So you don't need the biggest tools. You don't need the most expensive tools. The simple stuff works. Just get started and see how it feels and see what you learn.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much. Just keeping in mind the time, I'm gonna maybe ask 2 more questions before we have to wrap it up, unfortunately. And I guess one question that I think everybody who's watching would be interested in is, maybe you can answer this, who should become a video producer, and can anyone create amazing video content? And maybe, yeah, I mean, you already touched on it in your presentation, but what are the most important skills if somebody has that wish of becoming a producer?
That's a really interesting question, because I would say that I'm both someone who is made for production and someone who is not. I am really a people person. I like organizing. I like hosting. I like creating fun, positive experiences. And so combining that with my creativity is, for me, just a dream, being able to be the person responsible for putting together teams and leading them through a project, as well as contributing my own creative input is fantastic for me. So if you're someone like that who really enjoys organization, making organization out of chaos, if you are an organized person, you know it, then maybe production is good for you. But I don't want to close the door for people who might not fit into that mold, because I am also a person who is maybe shy and who doesn't like telling people what to do, and that's something that I've had to improve, that I've had to work on as a producer, because as a producer, leading projects, you have to tell people what to do. You have to tell people what needs to be done and by when. So if you are someone who is a natural leader, this is also maybe a good fit for you. But even if you're not, but if that's something you want to get better at, if you are an empathetic person and you feel like you have a good sense for people and how to accommodate and treat people, and want to do work like that in a creative capacity, then production could be just what you need. I hope that works.
Okay, yeah, thanks so much for answering that. I think, yeah, it's very relatable what you said about struggling to tell people what to do. And I think that anyone who has to do some kind of project management will encounter this challenge at some point. And I think it's really nice to hear that everyone sort of struggles with that, and it's a process of getting more confident and also learning how to communicate in an empathetic way and still being able to communicate, hey, XYZ has to be done by this date. So really like your answer there.
I have one more answer for who is maybe an ideal producer. Someone who has too many interests and doesn't know which one to follow. So me, for example, I had a phase where I wanted to be a cameraman. I had a phase where I wanted to be a screenwriter, where I wanted to be a designer, and I still want to be all of those things somehow. And so for someone like myself who just has a lot of different interests, a lot of different creative interests, and who wants to be close to all of them, and engage with all of those worlds, but not necessarily focus on one, production is really cool because I have to engage with artists and musicians and camera people and light technicians and designers, and work really closely with them and share ideas with them. And so it gives me the satisfaction of tapping into all of those different parts of my personal interests and creativity. So if you're someone like that who just has a lot of different interests, a lot of different creative interests, and doesn't know how to consolidate them, production might be perfect for you too.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I hope this has helped anyone who's watching and is considering a career in producing or digital marketing. Unfortunately, I don't think we have time for any more questions. I do hope that we answered most of them. And yeah, just a couple of things before we wrap up is I would say, if you are interested in video producing, digital marketing, then I would highly recommend checking out a free short course from CareerFoundry. My colleague in the background is going to post the link in the chat in a little bit, so you can check that out. Just again, thank you everyone so much for watching tonight and for sharing all your questions with us and for being so interactive on LinkedIn and in Big Marker. And one of the couple of things I just wanted to mention is that we also have a fantastic blog here at CareerFoundry where we post a lot of articles about digital marketing, but also other tech industries. And of course, our YouTube channel, where you will be able to find this recording, but we'll also send it out, so no worries about that. And of course, if you did like this event, then please consider signing up for another one. We have a lot of them on our website. And just one last thing. If you're thinking about a career in tech, changing into tech, and you've been inspired by today's presentation, then I can also highly recommend booking a call with one of our program advisors. You have the link in the sticky note in the chat. And just so you know, we're currently offering a career change scholarship, and it's actually worth up to 1,125 or 1,125 euros. Sorry, the first one was dollars. And it's off the full price of our digital marketing program. So if that's something you're interested in, check it out. And again, Julian, thank you so much for this presentation. I've learned a lot. And it was really great chatting with you again. And any last words?
No, thank you all for listening. I hope this was helpful. As I mentioned, feel free to find me on LinkedIn if you want to ask questions about film production or my own experience with the UX program at CareerFoundry. I'm happy to speak with you. And wish you all a nice evening or morning wherever you are.
Exactly, wherever you're joining from, have a good one. Thanks so much. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.